Good morning, good afternoon, dear participants. I think we are good to start now. Welcome to this briefing about the outcomes of the face-to-face segment of the 2021-2022 meetings of the Basel, Rotterdam and Stockholm Conventions COPs. My name is Andrea Lechner. I'm a program officer in the Secretariat, and I have the pleasure of taking you through these presentations about the main outcomes. And then afterwards, we will have some time for questions and answers and discussions. So as you all know by now, we have had a very special arrangement for the meetings of the conferences of the parties due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So the 15th meeting of the Basel COP, the 10th meeting of the Rotterdam and Stockholm COPs took place in 3 segments. We had an online segment last year to take urgent and prioritized decisions. Then we had a high-level segment on the 1st of June of this year in connection with the Stockholm Plus 50 international meeting in Stockholm. And then we had the face-to-face segment of our COPs in June this year in Geneva. At the high-level segment, we had over 100 ministers and high-level representatives that renewed their commitment for a planet safe from chemicals and waste. And then at the face-to-face segment, we had about 1,500 participants from 160 parties and 130 observer organizations. The COPs at the face-to-face segment adopted, while the Basel Convention adopted 28 decisions, 16 for Rotterdam and 22 for Stockholm. And out of these, 7 were joint decisions taken by the 3 COPs. We're going to start looking now at the main outcomes, starting with the Basel Convention. The most remarkable one under the Basel Convention is probably the amendment to the convention related to the e-waste entries. This amendment was based on a proposal made by Ghana and Switzerland, and following discussion at the COP, it was adopted. So amendments were made to the annexes 2, 8, and 9 of the convention, with the intention of including non-hazardous e-waste in Annex 2. So this is the annex that contains wastes requiring special consideration. And the outcome of this amendment is that all types of e-waste, whether hazardous or not, are now subject to the prior informed consent procedure. So the intention is to give a better means to vulnerable countries to protect themselves against unwanted imports and to contribute to the environmental sound management of these wastes. And these amendments will become effective on 1st of January.
Andrea, we can't hear you.
We can hear you, Andrea. We cannot hear you.
Sorry, I think I lost connection. I hope you can hear me again now.
Yeah, now it's clear.
Now it's clear.
Okay, I'm sorry for that. That's strange. Okay. So I think you still heard me finish the part on the e-waste entries. So I was going on to the technical guidelines to say that updated technical guidelines have been adopted. 3 of them relating to POPs waste covered under the Stockholm Convention. So the general guidelines were updated, the ones on PFOS, PFOS-F and PFOA, and the ones on POPs pesticides. And also updated guidelines were adopted for ESM of mercury waste, then for incineration as covered by the disposal operations D10 and R1, and then those on specially engineered landfills, D5. Further work was also carried out on other technical guidelines, so the plastic waste guidelines were updated and the work is going to continue. Then there was also a decision taken to update again the POPs waste guidelines in order to include the chemicals newly listed under the Stockholm Convention. Then it was decided that the technical guidelines on e-waste would be updated in order to reflect the e-waste amendments to the annexes of the convention. A decision was taken to update the technical guidelines on waste lead-acid batteries, and also to start the development of technical guidelines on other waste batteries. And furthermore, the technical guidelines on used and waste pneumatic tires will also be updated as part of the work on plastic waste. In the area of national reporting, there have been 3 practical guidance documents developed. These relate to the development of inventories on plastic waste, obsolete pesticide and pesticide container waste, and waste batteries containing lithium. In the area of the electronic approaches to notification and movement documents, the work is going to continue, and parties have been invited to work on pilot projects in this area. Work is also continuing on the further consideration of plastic waste. Comments have been invited on whether the technical guidelines on rubber wastes and waste pairings and scrap of rubber should be developed, and also to see what other further activities could be conducted on plastic waste. In the area of the strategic framework of the convention, there has been a strategic framework for 2012-2021, and a final evaluation was done for this COP, and there have also been discussions about the future, and the COP decided that the small intersessional working group should continue its work in order to see if the current strategic framework could be updated and improved in order to also use it under the convention in the future. And linked to this topic, the COP also decided to start a new track of work relating to the functioning of the prior informed consent procedure, because several parties have brought to the attention that there are challenges in this area and the working of this PIC procedure. So right now, comments are being collected on what could be done to improve this procedure. Related to the Implementation and Compliance Committee, 2 guidance documents developed by the committee were adopted, one on insurance bond and guarantee, and the second on transit transboundary movements. A work program for the committee was approved, and also 5 members of the committee elected. Really a lot happened under the Basel Convention, as you can see, so it's going on. There was another amendment proposal from the European Union in front of the COP that related to amending Annex 4 of the Convention, and that came from the area of work on the review of annexes under further legal clarity. And there the decision was that the consideration of this amendment proposal is to continue. A practical manual for stakeholders to ensure that notifications of transboundary movements meet ESM requirements has been adopted and is now part of the Convention's environmentally sound management toolkit. Related to the follow-up partnership to PACE, the COP adopted an extended scope of this partnership, a new name, and also the work program for this biennium. And the partnership is now called Partnership for Action on Challenges Relating to E-Waste. The COP also heard progress reports from the other partnership, Plastic Waste Partnership, Household Waste Partnership, and the Network Against Legal Traffic that is called Enforce. And there are also new Enforce members were elected. Related to the open-ended working group, it was decided to hold one ahead of the next meeting of the Conference of the Parties. And it has been shortened a little bit, so it will be a 3-day OEWG to be held in February, and a work program was adopted. Turning now to the Rotterdam Convention, where the major outcome probably is the listing of 2 new chemicals in Annex 3 of the Convention. So the COP actually had quite a large number of chemicals that were recommended by the Chemical Review Committee for inclusion in front of it, 7 chemicals. And out of these 7, 2 were listed. And on the others, there was no agreement to list them, no consensus. So the listed ones are decabromodiphenyl ether and its salts and related compounds. So both of these chemicals are already included in Annex A to the Stockholm Convention. Deca-BDE is an industrial chemical, a flame retardant that is used in polymers and high-impact polysterenes, with the end uses in electronic and electrical equipment, for example, computers, TVs, wires. And then PFOA is also an industrial chemical. It is used as a water, oil, and grease repellent, as a surfactant or coating agent, and also in firefighting foams. The amendments to include these new 2 chemicals will enter into force on the 22nd of October for all parties. And the implication of this listing is that they are subject to the prior informed consent procedure. So that means that all parties will be asked if they wish to continue importing these chemicals. On the Chemical Review Committee, 17 new experts were appointed by the COP to serve as members for the coming 4 years. And then also Ms. Nolozuku Gawai from South Africa was confirmed for a 2nd term on the committee, so she's continuing as the chair of this committee for a 2nd term. The Rotterdam Convention COP also adopted a program of work for the Compliance Committee. So that is a new committee that was established at the last COP, and now it also has a work program for this biennium. In the area of implementation of the convention, the COP encouraged parties to ensure an effective operation of the Rotterdam Convention, so in particular for them to prepare notifications of final regulatory action when they prohibit or severely restrict the chemical, to do import responses for the chemicals in Annex 3 to the convention, etc. Also, parties, non-parties, industry, civil society, and other stakeholders were invited to provide data on international trade in chemicals that are listed under the convention or recommended for listing. In the area of enhancing the effectiveness of the convention, an information dissemination strategy had been prepared by the Secretariat, and the Secretariat was requested to implement these activities. And the intention of the strategy is to make use of existing information and existing guidance documents in various activities in order to enhance their outreach and use. Turning now to the Stockholm Convention. One of the main outcomes there also relates to the listing of additional chemicals. So in the case of Stockholm, it is perfluorohexansulfonic acid, BFHXS, its salts and related compounds. They were included in Annex A to the Convention without specific exemptions. And chemicals listed in Annex A may no longer be produced, used, imported, or exported by parties to the Convention. So that is the big difference between Stockholm, where the listing implies a prohibition to continue the production, use, import, and export, while under the Rotterdam Convention, it is purely to submit the chemicals to a prior informed consent procedure in international trade. The Persistent Organic Pollutants Review Committee had 17 new members appointed. And in the case of this committee, the COP requested the committee to identify an interim chair by electronic means that will preside over the 18th meeting of the committee and who will then be officially elected by the next COP. And I just see I mentioned to forgot, so PFHXS, this is also a group of industrial chemicals very much used in stain-resistant fabrics, firefighting foam, and food packaging. Other major outcomes related to specific exemptions, the COP took note that exemptions for hexabromocyclododecane, pentachlorophenol, and technical endosulfan are no longer available to parties because the timeline for registering for these exemptions has passed. And then also work is continuing on identifying the need for specific exemptions for short-chain chlorinated paraffins and decabromodiphenyl ether. And then the evaluation is going to take place at the next meeting of the COP. Related to DDT, the parties took note that most countries that are still using DDT for disease vector control, so that are included in the DDT register, they are working towards phasing out these, the use of DDT. And that's why the COP initiated an intersessional process for consultations to see whether it's possible to phase out DDT. Related to PCBs, this is quite an important topic right now because there is a deadline specified in the convention to eliminate the use of PCBs in equipment by 2025 and to achieve environmentally sound management of PCB waste by 2028. And these deadlines are coming up very soon, and there's still a huge amount of work that needs to be done to reach these deadlines. So that's why the COP urged parties to step up their efforts to immediately implement actions to achieve these objectives. And then finally, for BDEs, the COP urged parties to strengthen their measures for environmentally sound management of waste containing brominated diphenyl ethers and to review the continued need for the specific exemptions, which will be evaluated at the 12th meeting of the COP. In the areas of guidelines and guidance, so the COP welcomed the adoption of the technical guidelines on POPs waste as done by the Basel Convention, and then they invited the Basel Convention to update relevant guidelines to include BFHXS. On patent BEP, there was guidance developed for the use of hexabromocyclododecane, pentachlorophenol, PFOA, PFOS, and related compounds, and polybrominated diphenyl ethers. There was also new guidance developed on updating and developing national implementation plans, and also draft guidance on the identification and management of POPs contaminated sites. In the area of financial mechanism, the COP provided new guidance to the Global Environment Facility, the GEF, who is the principal entity of the financial mechanism of the Stockholm Convention. The COP welcomed the draft report on the 5th review of the financial mechanism. So at this COP, the 5th review took place, and also an assessment of the funding needs had taken place for developing country parties and parties with economy in transition for implementing the convention. And the COP took note of this funding needs assessment. Also in the area of financial mechanism, PCB is quite a prominent topic right now, because not only that it's a big challenge to reach the implementation of to reach these goals of the convention related to PCB, also there seems to be a huge funding gap to support developing country parties to reach these objectives. So the COP took note of this funding gap and countries UN organizations, NGOs, and others to provide complementary support in order to enable parties to reach the objectives of the convention related to PCB. In the area of national reporting, there is the 5th national reports that are due by 31st August 2022, and they will be part of the effectiveness evaluation of the committee, which is taking place at the next meeting of the COP. The Secretariat was also requested to further improve and update the electronic reporting system. That is usually done at every COP because new chemicals are included, so the reporting system also has to be updated accordingly. On the effectiveness evaluation, I already mentioned the next review will take place at COP11. So the effectiveness evaluation
I don't hear you again, Andrea.
Hello, now it doesn't show me.
Yes. Now I can hear you. But maybe not anymore.
How about back? I seem to have internet. Seemingly not.
Not very stable, actually.
Oh, I'm so sorry. How about now? Can you hear me more or less? Yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm really sorry for these technical problems today. Evaluation. And then a few things also happened on joint issues, technical assistance. The COP took note on the technical assistance needs, on the report on the implementation. Will implement this TA plan in cooperation with the relevant actors. The COP also emphasized the key role of regional centers, FAO, UNEP, and other IOMC organizations in delivering technical assistance. Related to the regional centers, the next evaluation of the performance and sustainability of the centers will related to the Minamata Convention on Mercury. The COP took mirroring decisions to the decisions that were the Minamata Convention at its COP3 and COP4. So the Executive Secretaries requested to continue cooperating with Minamata on relevant matters and to shared services on a cost recovery basis. Under international cooperation and coordination, the decision is quite lengthy. So here just a few highlights. Of course, very interesting are the developments related to the UNEA resolutions, in particular on the one on the new treaty the Executive Secretary of BRS has been requested to participate in this work, and then work of the ad hoc open-ended working group to prepare a science policy panel on chemical waste and preventing pollution. And very important also in this area of work is that to ensure that there is complementarity and coherence between this new treaty and the science policy and the BRS conventions in their negotiations of these two new instruments. Related to the COP renewed their request for this to happen. Then the COP also requested BRS to continue cooperating with the strategic approach on international chemicals management. It welcomed the exploratory studies that were done by BRS and Minamata on linkages between chemicals and waste and biodiversity and also climate change. And it requested the Secretariat to prepare a report on how BRS could contribute to the post-2020 biodiversity framework cases of illegal traffic. And I'm stopping my camera now just so that you can hear me better. And for the Basel Convention, such a process already exists, so the parties were reminded to report on cases of illegal traffic. Looking then at the some other areas, so budgets and program of work for the three conventions were adopted for 2022, 2023. They constitute a continuation of the current programmatic activities. So there was just a reduction for the Basel open-ended working group. The meeting used to be 4 days. It was reduced to 3 days. And also reductions were made under the program of work activity 35, which is administrative services costs under the convention. But overall, otherwise, the activities will continue as implemented previously. And what for meeting participants, to be funded for attending COPs and open-ended working groups, because in the past we were following the practice of not providing funding for OECD countries. And now the decision was that the decision on whether to fund parties or not should be based on the classification So we will follow that report in order to decide who can be fundable, which in particular at current, that would imply that a few of the OECD countries that could not be funded before, for example, Mexico, Chile, Costa Rica, they can now be funded if they wish to receive financial support to attend meetings. Of course, within all those parties that can be funded, the Secretariat will continue giving priority according to what has been decided in the financial rules under the developed countries and small island developing states will continue to be serve basis. On the clearinghouse mechanism, the COPs decided to continue to implement the strategy from science to action. We will also strengthening the science policy interface. And then, of course, very interestingly, we have a date for the next meeting of the Conference of the Parties. Very pleased that the Bahamas to host us in the Bahamas from 8 to 19 May 2023. As you can see, this is in a very short time to prepare already for this next meeting of the COPs. There was also a number of other events, of course, taking place in the framework of the COPs. We had the Plastic Forum, which was a multi-stakeholder event dedicated to promoting environmentally sound management of plastic waste. So there were side events, there were illuminated, so lots of events and then also side events taking place on many topics related to the convention, over 45 side events. You can, one of the highlights of this Plastic is Forever campaign, there were 2 promotional videos starring Pierre Brosnan and his son, taught the importance of the conventions, and then also a second one by tennis player Dominic Thiem. There's also a photo album available where you can check out the pictures from the meetings. And then I'd like to briefly turn to so follow-up letters have been sent out. I hope you have all received them. They've been sent to all the contact points under the convention in English like a week or 2 ago. And right now you go on the website in the section of see what it's called. It's called Call for Information. So in each of the respective websites under the COPs, under Call for Information, there you can audio. Hello? Now I think it should be working. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, no, we can't hear.
No, you still cannot hear. I'm really sorry. Yeah, you can hear me now? Okay, all right. Nearly there, nearly there. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry for this. So I was just saying, either make nominations or contribute information. So for the Basel Convention, there is a whole list of areas where the nomination of experts is possible if you are interested in participating in the various small intersessional working groups or expert working groups. Then there's also a whole number of calls for information. where parties and others are invited to contribute with comments, with experiences, etc. Same for the Rotterdam Convention. A couple of calls for information are open. And also under the Stockholm
Andrea, is it possible to go back 2 pages so that we can just look at the call for information again, or the call?
Sure. Which one did you want to look at?
The first one, the Basel Convention.
Nominations or information?
Nominations for participation in the working groups.
Sure.
That's the one.
For it.
Thank you.
No problem. And that.
It was just a bit. It was just a bit quick to read.
No, sorry. You will
I
get this
couldn't-
presentation, actually.
I can't speed read that quickly.
It's
Thank you
okay.
very
You are
much.
actually going to get this presentation now to download and then also by email. So that's why.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, you can move on, please.
Sorry again for these problems. And now it's time, please, for any questions you might have or comments. So you can either raise your hand and ask your question, or you send it in the chat message. I see there are already a couple of messages coming in. I'm going to have a look at it now. Please don't hesitate.